Welcome back to the Hubbard's Handmade Shop. I am Ryan Hubbard. Today we're going to be working on this custom epoxy front dresser for my daughter's room. So right off early in this video, I wanted to establish how easy it is to work with these SVGs, and you don't have to be able to draw to be able to do things like this. If you just go onto Etsy and search for what you want with like an SVG, that's what I used with the Shaper Origin. You know, it probably works differently with different CNC machines, and that's not, I don't have a lot of experience with that, but it's easy to take, a file like this where you have a whole bunch of mountains and, just decide what you want, and it usually just costs $1 or $2, and then turn it into, something like this that you cut out and put the epoxy in or whatever you want to do with it, paint it or... And I also wanted to point out that you don't have to just take the file that they give you and strictly, use it as it's designed, because you can see right here, none of these match what we ended up doing, which is like giraffe tree, lion tree, some birds, This file, I was able to take the shapes and individually move them around to make it into what I wanted, and then cut it out to be, what we wanted. You have different options for these things. This one, we left out the clouds and the sun, but we really like the mountain, so we kept those, and that ended up being one of Ella's favorite drawings. So you can kind of do with it what you want to do. And so I use Adobe Illustrator. The butterfly was also a separate thing. It wasn't part of that, but I found a free file to add that in there. And here's just a couple of the other ones, what they look like before we cut them out on the CNC machine. There are lots of YouTube videos and tutorials out there about how to use programs like this, how to use your Shaper Origin or whatever CNC machine it is, so that you can go in and figure this out and do what you want to do. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about that. This is just what we used, and you can decide what you want to use. We're going to be working with some simple pine or fir lumber and plywood, and we wanted to start out by preparing the drawer fronts to get them over to the CNC machine. Since we have 6 of these drawer fronts and we're going to need to pour epoxy on each of them, I'm going to knock together this frame really quick to be able to hold these, and I made it just a little bit bigger than all of the drawer fronts so the plastic doesn't get in the way. And I immediately put that on the wrong surface. I've been working with the Shaper Origin for probably just over half a year now, and it really is super simple once you get your design in place and you're ready to go. It almost gamifies the CNC process, where you're pushing this green button so that it kind of does its thing automatically, and then you move it around to follow the dotted lines and stuff. It really is just so easy to do, and my daughter is 17, and I put her to work on some of her drawer fronts, and it seemed to go pretty well. I've got my mold inside of a garbage bag, and I am going to use a little bit of mold release. And here's our first drawer front that's done, this sort of mountain scene. I'm going to drop that right in there, and I just need to do a little bit of top coat so that the epoxy doesn't soak into the areas that are raised up, and then we'll pour some epoxy on that. We're working on our last 2 drawer fronts. We're going to pour in 2 different areas. We've got our whole bunch of colors ready to go here, and our different measurement. This kind of epoxy you can mix by volume, but what I find really useful is you can mix by weight, and so that's why I divided out into grams. Big ones, medium ones, and in this case small ones. We're going to mix 33.2 grams with 40 grams of resin, and that equates to about 2.5 ounces. So I've got my hardener in there. I always pour hardener first and then resin second. So we're just trying to get this to 40 grams. 39.9. Good enough. Okay, this is what happens when you are trying to mix and you have your worst shop helpers out here with you. Don't chew on that. Maple, no. Don't chew on that. She's attached to me because she's new and don't want her wandering off. this shop helper's okay.
Bruh. How dare you?
I just threw away the messy cups, and here we are in the wet epoxy state. Everything's kind of flowing everywhere, but we've got yellows and purples over here, purple and gold butterfly, that's gonna look pretty cool. Golds and blues and pinks over here. We'll see how that turns out. I really love how the time lapse of this process came out. It's kind of fun to just put the camera in place and go to town with all the different epoxy pours and stuff. So we use like a gold and the same color that the lion is. We use that for the dots on the giraffe. Things started running over, so we had to kind of get the grass in place really quick while, you know, everything was still where it was supposed to be. And even then, we did a little scooping of the colored epoxy where it was supposed to be. It didn't come out perfect, but in the end, I really like how it came out, actually. And once everything had hardened for a couple of days, I took it back over to the drum sander to make that flush with the top layer of the wood. And then from there, it was just a whole lot of hand sanding. I didn't show any of that because it's just a boring process. But this goes fairly quickly, just kind of running it through the drum sander to get it flat, and then hand sanding up to 220 or 320 grit. And then the finish that we put on it really makes the colors come back out. So you'll kind of see that a little bit later on. Okay, so I have a cove bit installed in my router table, and this is what's going to form the lip underneath, because we're not doing any drawer pulls, to be able to grab the doors and pull them out. So I like what we've got going here, but it was less than half the width of the drawer, and so what I'm going to do to make that finger pull a little bit bigger is just to raise up this bit, and we'll take another pass, which will just widen the finger grip on the drawer fronts. Off camera, I glued up some of these boards to make the sides of the dresser, and I sanded them as well, and then I'm just cutting them down to size using my table saw and this table saw sled, because this is about, I think it was 22 inches wide, and this is the safest way to get that all uniformed up. Then at the miter saw, I cut the legs to length, and I'm drilling pocket holes in the side to attach the legs. I used glue and pocket holes to put those in place and made sure everything was to the height that we wanted. It came out really well, and this is just a simple, easy way to do this process of attaching the legs and the sides together with pocket hole screws. This little goof there. So here I have my parts upside down, and I'm attaching the back to the sides, again with those pocket hole screws and glue. It took a little bit of wrangling, but it went together pretty easily. I think that was kind of hard to visualize on the camera, but now you can see we've got the upside down dresser with the two sides on. So I'm going to add a couple of support pieces at the top and bottom before I move on to the drawers. So I've got the clamp on here, and I'm putting in my first bracer, and then we're just going to follow that down for the drawers. These are going in with some glue and pocket hole screws. Almost done putting together drawer boxes, and I've been using the pocket hole method with the holes on the front and back, so that you'll never see the ones in the back of the drawer, and the ones in the front will be covered by our fancy drawer fronts that we've been making. I actually made a whole bunch of video about putting the drawers together, But there are much better videos out there, and if you want to go check out a good drawer video, I know Jay Bates has some good ones about this, and Brad Rodriguez. I followed his dresser video pretty closely with this build. His channel is called Fix This Build That, and I'll have links to both of those videos in the description. I'm to the point here where I'm putting on the drawer slides, and this Rockler jig is definitely the easiest way that I have ever found to line up drawer slides. Gotta put it over here, lock it in place, just making sure it's touching here and right here, and I'll just use a clamp to hold that down while I screw it in. That first screw in, and then once you have two in, it's okay to take the clamp off, take the jig off, and you'll be able to find your third hole to put another screw in. Alright, I'm at the point here where I've got all my drawers installed, and it's time to get the drawer fronts on there, and then off to finishing. So this stuff is great. We're using General Finishes Satin Top Coat, which is a gel based product, which means that you don't have to worry about it running or anything like that. You basically just slop a whole bunch of it on there, let it sit for a little bit, and then you wipe off the extra. And what's really cool is that you get to watch this transformation as the wood takes on a beautiful color. Wow. Yeah, that color change is amazing.
It looks so good.
You getting excited?
Yes.
Yes.
Like, I thought this wasn't gonna look good, but like it does.
Yeah.
It goes.
That's like the most rewarding part of any project, is like you get to the finishing step and it's like, oh my gosh, everything worked out.
It's coming together
so well.
Oh yes, it's all coming together.
Ella didn't really want to be in the video much, but I really had a fun time with her in the shop, and I'm glad that we could work on this project together. I used this double stick tape method to attach my drawer fronts. It went pretty well, a little bit of fiddling to get my placements correct, but I got everything where it was supposed to be in the end and closed up the gaps nicely. And then we just took the drawers out. We moved the dresser upstairs into Ella's room, and it was done. I am super happy with how this came out. We had such a good time together, coming up with all of these designs, putting them in place, pouring the epoxy. It was a long process, but it came out amazing in the end. I think Ella will be able to keep this for years and years if she wants to, and just really happy with the project. And thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this and learned something, and we'll see you next time in the Hubbard's Handmade Shop. The struggle to actually get it up the stairs. Woo!